and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Deputy City Clerk, would you take roll call, please?
I will. Member Causey?
Here.
Member Core?
Here.
Member Small? Excuse me. Vice Chair Garshaw?
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. First order of business, approval of the agenda. Ms. Coleman, any changes?
Madam Vice Chair, there are no changes proposed today.
Board, any questions, concerns? Okay. All in favor of the
Aye.
agenda? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so the first thing, we just want to let you know, if you do have any comments today that are not related to the specific agenda items, now will be a time that you can go fill out those yellow cards and let the Deputy City Clerk know. If you are speaking on behalf of any of these cases and going to be giving testimony, we would like to have you also be sworn in. So we can start with the swearing in.
Anyone who will be speaking to the board or making a presentation needs to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual representation that you are about to give or present to the board is truthful? Thank you.
Okay, are there any general audience comments? Okay, then we will move on. So first, approval of the meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review last month's meeting minutes? All right, any edits? Any comments?
I move to approve.
I have a couple.
Oh, I'm sorry. I take that back.
Okay, one, so let's see, this was a section that said, it was about me, so that's where I know it's not correct. So this was under the first case where it said that I had attended the TRC meeting, but I didn't actually attend, I had listened to it. So I just want to correct that. The other, I thought was a little bit, I wanted to make sure we clearly captured this. There was a motion made on the second case, but we ended, and I did rewatch the tape, so to speak, to make sure I was correct, but we didn't actually have that first motion carried because we stopped the vote and made the amendment. So I just want to make sure that was properly reflected. It did say that the motion carried 5-0 for the approval, and then the amended motion was noted later. So I just want to make sure that was clear, and I'm not sure if I'm interpreting that properly.
Okay, I'll make the changes.
Okay, all right, thank you. So would anyone want to make a motion to approve based on those amendments?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve.
I'll second.
Okay,
Member Causey?
Yes.
Member Core?
Yes.
Member Small?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garshaw?
yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Okay, great. So on the action items today, we have two cases. The first one, case number 25055, 2311 Pass-A-Girl Way. Brandon?
Oh, don't forget, we had two ex parte
Please,
disclosures.
okay, yes. Do we have any, do you want to go ahead and ask that?
If we could go down the row and just explain whether you had any contact with the applicants or any other persons, and
No contact.
whether you visited the site.
Okay, are we doing this for all cases or just the one?
One at a time.
One at a time. I have nothing to disclose.
I've visited the site, but I have not talked to anybody.
Same here, just site visit.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Brandon Berry, planner. Pull up the PowerPoint. This is variance case 25052 for the property address of 2311 Pass-A-Girl Way. It is an unnecessary and undue hardship variance. Jens Johansson, who is the owner, requests to construct a single-family residence with elevator shaft that will extend to 41 feet, 2 inches above natural pre-fill grade, where 40 feet is the maximum permitted height above natural pre-fill grade. This is a variance from Land Development Code sections 20.15 house large standards and 20.17. Here's a listing of exhibits. Here's an aerial of the property. It's located at the southern end of the a residential strip. It's just north of the St. Pete Yacht Club. The parcel to the south previously contained a residence back in 2018 or 2019. It was demolished and created as an extension of the parking lot for the St. Pete Yacht Club. The property has a zoning of RU2 PAG. This is a detached single-family residential zoning. That is what the applicant is proposing. They're not seeking any variance to the use standards. It is just north of the institutional district. So going into details on this request, and I'll show this in more detail on the elevation, but the applicant is not requesting a variance to the height of the primary roof line of the residence. They're seeking a variance to add fill to the lot and allow for the overall height of the residence based on pre-fill measurements to exceed the allowable height for the elevator shaft overrun. And again, that'll be more clear when I show the elevation. They're not seeking any kind of variance to the overall allowable height of the home, even measured from pre-fill grade. It does meet the required measurement. It is only an elevator shaft overrun of 1 foot 2 inches that they are seeking this variance to. Here's a survey showing existing conditions. This is associated with the new residence. You can see the existing lot grade and the existing condition of the lot on the screen. Here's a site plan that is proposed. This has been submitted for building review. It has passed zoning review except for this height variance. It is pending approval based on the outcome of this case. Here's a rendering showing the front elevation. This was shared with the Historic Preservation Board last year. It did go through the required design review. The applicant has made a few minor modifications to address staff comments and other comments that were shared at that meeting. So looking at the proposed front elevation, the very bottom dashed line shows the approximate existing grade. Now, there has been some fill removed from the lot. It would be reestablished to the pre-fill grade of 4.67. The applicant is seeking to grade the lot up to 6 foot NAVD 1988, which is the measurement that the city currently uses as a datum point. From the existing grade prior to fill, this home does meet the required height. However, because they are adding in that additional 1 foot and 1/3, the elevator shaft enclosure is now exceeding that measurement that would be allowed by 1 foot 2 inches. So only for the elevator shaft, they are seeking a variance relative to the pre-established grade. Here's the rendering showing the rear elevation. And here are some photographs of the site. Signposting. You can see the existing grade of the lot, and as you pull out further, you can see how it kind of dips down where that fill was removed from the lot and would be reestablished. This is showing the grade difference with the neighbor's property. This is one of the first seawalls and one of the few along Paso Girl Way that have been established since the city increased its height standard to 5 foot NAVD 88 for seawalls. The seawall has been installed at that standard. You can see the difference in height with the neighbor's seawall. And this is from the other side, on the southern side, adjacent to the St. Pete Yacht Club. So to summarize staff findings, as I mentioned before, only the elevator shaft overrun requires a variance. The primary home's roof, the top of the parapet, does comply with the grade change proposed. So even with that 1 foot 2 inch difference, with that difference taken into account, it does still comply with the maximum height for the lot based on the pre-fill grade. The applicant has graded their lot to 6 foot NAVD and 88 to allow for adequate lot drainage relative to the new code compliant seawall, which, as I mentioned before, is established at 5 feet. This is a unique circumstance. It's one of the first code compliant seawalls along Paso Girl Way and one of the first to be established prior to new development. A recommended slope of 1 to 2% across the lot to provide adequate drainage on site does justify the 6 foot NAVD 88 measurement of the lot grade relative to the 5 foot seawall. So looking at the grade change across the site with a 1 to 2 2% grade differential across the site, that does justify a 6-foot grade height. The applicant is not building a taller home from grade than what would be permitted if they did not grade up the lot to compensate for the seawall. The grade change causes the need for this variance. If they had built this same home at the same height at 4.67 feet as was the prior established grade, they would not need any variances at all. The difference in 1 1/3 foot in grade is what is causing the need for this variance, but the actual measurement of the home relative to that grade is not what causes that variance. It's the grade change. However, to the knowledge of staff, there are no building or design codes prohibiting the applicant from reducing the floor height by the 1.2 feet requested to comply with the code. The Florida Building Code does have a minimum ceiling height. The Paso Grill overlay also has a minimum floor height of 8 feet. They could still comply with that standard by reducing the floor height of the living levels and the garage level. The applicant should be prepared to provide their own testimony and respond to staff comments that whether the elevator shaft overrun is the minimum necessary to meet rooftop access requirements and/or state the need for the floor height of the living or ground floor level. The applicant should also provide testimony if there have been any alternative plans that have been developed should the variance not be granted. Effectively, how would they develop the home should this variance not be granted today? Staff has not proposed any conditions. There are motion options to approve the case as proposed, to deny the case, or if you feel that you need more information to make a decision, to continue the case to a date certain. We'd be happy to take any questions. The owner and the applicant is present.
I have no questions.
I have a question. Do elevators come in standard sizes? Or are they custom made for each house?
I believe this is custom made for the house, but I believe that the applicant has stated that there is a minimum overrun of the elevator shaft relative to where they established a top level that would require that overrun, but that they can confirm that.
Any other?
Brandon, I've got a question for you. So just towards an eye of not having, as more seawalls get fixed, this coming back, can you just explain to me how the height current limitation, what is the datum for that? And then is that datum, why isn't that different? Does it need to be changed for the future based on the newer seawall height? Because, I mean, everything's going to get backfilled as the seawall heights come up for all the lots.
So the impact is going to be largely on those developments that are to the absolute maximum height that would be allowed in this district. For example, what the applicant is proposing here, it's a difference of 1.2 feet. They are building the home relatively close to that maximum, which is what necessitates the need for this variance. The roof line of the residence complies. It's the elevator shaft overrun that needs it. There are two options for residential property owners. They can measure from the required design flood elevation, or they can measure from 8 feet above pre-fill grade. To your point, as more homeowners come in, as they start to grade up their lots, there may need to be a variance, but only to build homes at the absolute maximum height that's allowed. When this came in for design review, the elevations were not shown. They were only shown relative to the grade measurement, but we didn't have an established grade to measure to note that this would be an issue down the line. And I believe there was also a change to the pitch of the elevator shaft that might have necessitated part of this. As more seawalls go in, it's going to be a difficulty, but again, the height of the home could be reduced to 1.2 feet. There are options to comply. It's just, it does place a greater burden on the applicant in that regard.
So the only reason this is here is because the plan was done before the grade, before they realized the seawall was going to cause the backfill?
The grade wasn't reflected on the design review plan, and there was no established grade relative to the existing lot grade, so yes.
So there wouldn't be a reason for this to ever happen again?
Not if someone was aware of the standard and seeking to develop to the height allowed for the district, no.
Brandon, can you pull up that proposed front elevation? Page. And I know it's really small, but I think when I was looking at it in the packet, and does it show, so the garage level is 8 And then the next the first living level, I should say, is 9, and then the highest living level is like 10?
Correct. It's, the highest living level is 10, the level below that is 9, and the level below that is 8, correct?
Okay, just wanted to clarify, so there's decisions on the design.
Am I correct? There's no opposition to this from any of the neighbors?
I'm sorry, we did receive one letter in opposition.
Correct.
I don't think I have that, do I?
That was included in your packet.
It was? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is that the neighbor to the north?
That would be... No, I'm the neighbor to the north. No.
Well, the neighbor to the south is the yacht club.
It was not from either of those. It was,
Objected?
It's within
No.
300 feet of the parcel, but I'll verify.
Okay, thank you, Brandon.
thank you.
Okay, would the representative for this case like to come up and speak on behalf of the variance request? And if you don't mind, please state your name and...
I'm Danny Creamer. I'm actually his neighbor to the north. I built my house there in 2021.
Are you presenting this case to us? Is this your...
At Yen's request.
Oh, okay.
And I just wanted to make sure everybody understands the purpose of having to raise the grade is the governing authorities required that the seawall be raised 16 inches. So if he could have been allowed to build his seawall at the same grade that the old seawall was, he would meet his design as is would have met the original requirements. But they now make you have a minimum height of 5 foot on the seawall. That pushed the whole house up 16 inches, which is the reason for the 1 foot 2 inch request. And I think Brandon thought that there was some fill had been removed from the site. That's not the case. No fill's ever been removed. Just the old house. You are going to see this in other houses, I think. People don't want to do 8-foot ceilings in Paso Grill. They're going to want 9, 10-foot ceilings in their living areas, and I think you'll see a lot of requests when they realize that you're really. The seawall height's going up 16 inches is in effect making you lower the roof height by 16 inches if you meet the old requirements. And they're more, I think after those storms, we're going to start seeing more and more houses in Paso Grill that don't meet the 50-50 rule being torn down and rebuilt or elevated and built underneath. And as they replace their seawalls, they're going to have the same problem. But I just want to make sure it's just a real simple thing. The seawall went up, so the house went up. So the top of the house went up with it, and it pushed it 1 foot 2 inches higher than the old.
But you're not objecting to this?
I have no objections to it. It won't affect anything on my behalf.
So you have questions for the applicant? Does anyone have questions? Well, I will ask some questions. I think, one, did you look at alternative designs for the elevator, since it's custom?
We looked to see if there's any way to reduce the height of the elevator shaft,
Yep.
and it's at the absolute minimum height now.
Okay. And what is the hardship of making both floors 10 feet, or 9 feet, instead of one being 10 and the other 9?
Well,
Because 9 feet for the main living space, and then the next floor up is 10. What's the hardship about the design being 9 feet
Even if
at
you
both
went from
levels?
10 foot to 9 foot, you're still a couple or 3 inches over the maximum height.
Yeah, I'm just asking the question. Then 8.7 feet. What, is that a hardship?
It's just not as nice a living space. We're in here with probably 10-foot ceilings.
Yeah. I have 8 feet ceilings at home, so I understand. It's beautiful to have tall ceilings.
This room would change if you brought it down to an 8'6" ceiling.
And the whole neighborhood of Paso Grill can change too if everybody has 12-foot ceilings or whatever, right? So I'm just
11-foot ceilings on my main floor
why
and
you
9.5
see it as a
ceilings.
hard. I want to understand the hardship, so.
It's just a matter of aesthetics,
Yeah.
of livability.
Understood. Okay. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
No, I kind of want to ask my question to Brandon again, because I guess we're not discussing this with ourselves yet, but I'll ask Brandon one more question.
Okay.
I
All right.
might.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I'm not sure I still understand. So we've raised the seawall height as a requirement,
Yes.
but the height that we're allowing houses to be built and the old ceiling heights that you were able to get is now lower because of the seawall height.
To the extent that they need to grade up the lot, it would take whatever the difference in grade between pre and post fill. That would be a change, yes.
Yeah, I would really only be interested in voting this in if we were able to somehow initiate the change on that. How is that datum determined? And why isn't it readjusted for the seawall?
We could talk as staff if you want to make a recommendation to the city commission. That's certainly something we can look into. It's not something we're actively considering, but I understand your point that this could become a recurring issue. Now, I think it's really a consideration between is it expected that it be consistent for every property across the board. Some will need to raise the grade up higher than what the applicant's raising it just because they had a pre-fill grade at a higher height than other properties in Paso Grill. We could certainly take a look into that, but I don't know that that's under consideration today.
Yeah, maybe not. But I don't understand why. I think it's an unintended consequence of the seawall height being raised that the ceiling heights are lowered throughout the whole area.
Understand?
Brandon, also, if I may, were you through?
Yeah.
Is it just the elevator shaft that's above?
Correct. The roof line of the primary building and the parapet, it does meet, even with that 1 foot 2 inch difference. It will comply. It's that 1 foot 2 inches for the elevator shaft that is not compliant.
So as they bring the grade up, is there a way not to bring the grade up where the elevator shaft is going to be? Put footer around it, whatever?
So I think it's a combination of multiple things. The applicant mentioned the aesthetics and the intent to keep the floor heights at the height that they are. The grade does need to be brought up to some extent to comply with the new seawall height elevation. 6 feet, what the applicant's establishing, I believe, to be a reasonable grade change. If they were coming up to 7, 8 feet, I don't know that staff would be able to find a basis for that, but 6 feet is compliant with a 1% to 2% change.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay. Jenny, do we have any other comment cards for this case?
Not on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Brandon, just one more question for me. Not all houses have elevators. What is the need here? Why do they need an elevator? Or maybe this is for the applicant.
That'd be for the applicant.
I'd like to get something on the record why there is a need for an elevator, because it seems like the house is in compliance. It's the elevator that needs the variance.
Yeah, so there's no...
Would you please state your name and address for
I'm
the...
James Johansen. I'm the owner, and there are no other specific reason for the elevator. That it seems to be what is built into every house now that we are elevating due to the flood regulations. So that we have no more living on the ground floor, but living is high up in the building. So that's the reason for the elevator.
Madam
But
Vice
we have gone through all suppliers of elevators that we could find, at least with the architect, and there's no possibility to lower the elevator the shaft any further.
If I can just get back to Vice Chair's question about the top floor being a foot higher than the second floor. Can you explain why that's necessary to do that? Because if you made them conform to the same height, then you'd only be talking about 4 inches or 2 inches. 2 inches, and I'm pretty sure that would be easy enough to get.
Yeah, so it was the design, and as I think Brendan Barry said, when we realized, that the architect realized that that the house didn't move up with the grade that would move up with the new seawall height, we had already made the design, and there will be some changes more than that also to electrical and where we can have stuff like that. So it's a little more of a process than just taking away 1 foot in the 10 feet living area on the...
You mean because you'd have to redo the blueprints?
No, where it's situated, so we can be above flood.
Oh, I see.
But yes, so it is mainly, as Brandon and Danny has been pointing out, aesthetics.
And what floor, so mainly aesthetics, thank you. And what floors are the elevators serving?
All of them.
I don't understand the question.
Will the elevator serve you moving from the garage all the
Yes.
way to the rooftop?
Yes.
I see. I just wanted to understand if it maybe was also about, if it was serving to get you to your living floors
Yes.
versus the rooftop.
All of them.
That would, okay, so
there's
it's about taking you to the
elevator
roof
has,
that gets
the
that.
elevator has opening on each floor. And what the architect and we didn't realize until very late in the process was that when the seawall was elevated, thus also the necessity, because we have setback walls also from the seawall, the necessity from elevating the lot level, then all of a sudden what was designed was no longer within the design code, because the top elevation of the stayed with the old lot height.
Understand.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Understand. Totally understand. Yes. Thank you.
If I may, was the permit issued previously for this?
For the new home?
Yes.
No,
No. So this is the original application for this.
correct. Yes. And I just wanted, Madam Vice Chair, if I could, and I wish I had a copy of the floor plans, but you said it perfectly, that it does serve from the ground floor all the way to the rooftop deck, and that is one question kind of staff had, if there was an alternative method or different kind of stairwell that you wouldn't need to go all the way up to the rooftop deck to service that top area.
That's sheet 6 of 13. Oops.
I was thinking the floor plan of the rooftop deck.
This is the side elevation. Sorry, that shows the doors open.
In order
on the roof.
to reach, so you can correct us if we have this incorrect, but because you have the elevator servicing you all the way to the roof, not just the 2 living floors, it's the roof that causes it to bump into that additional 1.5 1.2
14 inches.
feet, inches. Thank you, 14 inches, that would be easier to say. So, okay, thank you. Maybe I will ask you one more question if you want to come back up. Is it an option for you to consider that this elevator only service your 2 living spaces, and that eliminates the need for the variance, and there would be another staircase, that approach that doesn't have all the mechanical requirements that bump you into that height restrictive area?
Yes, we have gone through it, but we would probably go with the lower height. I have a living mom and dad that would not, and we would love to have them come all the way up also. So, but we would then go with a lower, like you said before, living room height.
That would be the trade-off versus
would-
not servicing your rooftop. Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, if there are no other questions, I think we'll close the floor for comments and we can discuss.
I would like to ask a question to Kristen, I think, still, because I just wanted to, again, understand how the limit is set. Is that a city ordinance, the 36 feet and the 40 feet?
As part of how we determine the height,
Well, yeah, right. Like, from where do you start measuring the height, for example?
Yeah, so there is the two, as Brandon had mentioned before, the two different ways that we can determine that, either by the NAVD or the 8 feet above the pre-fill grade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, so,
I think he's asking, is that in the code?
Yes, it's in the code.
all right, yeah, I think I understand this now.
Any other,
No.
okay, discussion? I mean, Chris?
I don't see any reason not to grant it. I mean, it's only 14 inches, and with all the other complicating factors around it, I mean, you can't take an elevator just from the garage to the first floor. I mean, that's everybody, when they have it, it goes all the way to both floors above the garage. I mean, everybody I know that has them, that's how they all work. It's unfortunate, that's why I asked that about make the top floor the same height as the floor below, then you'd only be talking about 2 inches, but it doesn't seem like it's a big deal to me.
I think some of the issue is that the laws of our guidelines have changed since this was.
Yeah, a lot of that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm putting a new seawall in, and I know I'm a lot higher than I was, so I think it's good for the community, the seawall's higher.
Oh, they're great.
And there's no doubt about it, but these plans were drawn up, it sounds to me like before this even took place.
Yes, I guess I look at it as the character of the neighborhood, though. If everything just starts literally inching up, I mean, I'm.
It's going to happen.
I could live with 2 inches. I think sacrificing a foot to maintain some neighborhood historical, like not everything. Just
You mean
looking.
just on the second floor, just reduce the ceiling?
Yes, and give a variance of 2 inches for the smaller delta. To me, feels like
I mean,
a
we'd love-
better
we'd love
precedent to
just
set
raise
then.
all of Passive Road,
Exactly.
you know, and then we
Well,
wouldn't have that, but
I guess then we'll be
we
into.
need the higher seawall, so technically what we're doing is raising the grade of
Yeah.
Passive Road.
I mean, 40
Raising
feet
his
feels
grade
like
of
a
his
height
property.
that is a
That's what
reasonable
he's doing.
space to live in, to me. So I'm not ready to just leap into bumping everything up another foot in a neighborhood that really prides itself on historic preservation. So that's why I see it a little bit differently.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, you can go up and down just to, you start measuring where your pre-fill is. So anybody who wants to hire pre-fill, they just bring it in, and that's when they would start their measurement, as I understand it. So they would have 36 feet to the parapet, or they would have 40 feet up to whatever's sticking up above the parapet. And just, that could be end up with any height you want to pre-fill to. And so I don't see it as being it seems like it could be different for every house based on just the exact height of the dirt in the lot, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, but it's still measured off of the same, there's still a same base.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's
Where, can you clarify that then again? Because my impression is, okay, so every seawall is raised to 5-foot NAVD. So if we're all measuring to that level,
Yeah.
then you're building off of, I mean, that is not different if you're at this end of the city versus Pass-A-Grille. At 5-foot NAVD is the same measure of elevation, correct?
So I think going back to what Member Causey mentioned earlier, there is no set across the board post-fill elevation. In this case, it's 6 feet NAVD 88, which is a reasonable fill for most properties that have a seawall at 5 feet in most circumstances. But the pre-fill grade is going to vary across the city. For example, I believe the grade of the lot, looking back at the survey, was something like 3.2 feet, somewhere in the 3. Now that's based on the current conditions. That's not based on the conditions of the lot prior to demolition, where it was a little bit higher. We do use the higher of the two, but in some areas it might be 4.67, which is the case for this lot. In some areas it might be 6. Vina Del Mar has a much higher elevation for pre-fill, so there will be that 1 to 2 to 3 feet variation throughout the city.
Oh, sure, but all of our homes are at a certain elevation point
different.
today,
So
correct?
Kathy, yeah, that's what I was confused about to begin with too, but, so like your base floodplain, like your first
Yes.
floor level?
Yes.
That is based on a datum, that would be the same, but the this measurement, the 36 and the 40, are based on the height of the dirt in your yard,
Right?
rather than any datum that would be the same for any house, other house.
So I think the code as it currently is written, according to the staff report, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, it says that the height maximum is 40 feet is the maximum permitted height above natural pre-grade fill, which could vary from house to house. And it's the pre-grade fill, not the post-fill.
And the issue I have with that is that your pre-grade fill, like I'm doing a new seawall, I have to now have a step down to my dock. So I want my pre-grade fill to come up to where my seawall is, instead of having to step down to my dock, which is existing, so he doesn't have a dock right now. Do you have a dock?
Yes, and it's exactly what you're saying. The problem
Okay.
that
And mine was built for handicap purposes. So now I can't just wheel out to my dock. There's got to be a step down.
Well, Ralph, can you tell us what does it mean by pre-grade on the fill?
Yeah.
Is grade
Is that
the
defined,
final?
Brandon?
Yeah, it's the natural grade of the lot prior to any fill. Of course, that's very difficult to determine for any property that has been developed in the past, which is most of the properties in the city.
Well, and why it's important, though, pre-grade fill, is because that's naturally where all of your neighbors exist,
Right.
right? And so if you designed your home and you're one block off the water and these folks are right on the water, like whatever degree you're shifting, all of a sudden your views are going to change too. So to me, that's where, yes, it's amazing to be on the water and then it is a challenge because you have a seawall, but you also have that beautiful view. And when you keep going higher at that view, it changes everything else in terms of your landscape, because in particular, those lots are, I think, very important to us to have a look and feel of a community, because that's what you see from different lenses. So that's just another viewpoint I would share. That
Paso Grill is quite different from above 22nd Avenue, especially on Paso Grill Way, especially on the east side of Paso Grill Way. I mean, those are a whole line of beautiful houses that have been built over the years, not just recently, and they're quite different than below. The real historic part of Paso Grill is from the south side of 22nd Avenue down to the end. So I don't know that this changes the character much.
Well, it will change the character for anyone who's building in that area that's at a different grade, that isn't on the water, that has to look and consider what their new
I see your point.
neighbor's height is, that they can or can't, it now impacts that lens.
Could we take a look at the picture again?
Sure. And if I may, while we have the opportunity, we saw the existing grade on site, and you noticed it was kind of a bowl-like effect, but that was also maybe partially due to there was a home that was demoed.
The photograph, or the sketch of what it's going to look like? So as I look at it, the left side of that, is the roofs, that, whatever that is on the top, is that sort of slanting down or up?
Correct. That's a parapet. That's part of the roof design, but that portion of the structure complies with the parapet maximum height, even with the 14 inches of difference. So that is compliant. They're not asking for a variance for.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that went straight across rather than going up, would that change where the elevator needs to go?
I don't believe so, because the top of the roof is staying the same.
Flat.
It's flat, yes.
Show that other picture that's not as pretty, granted, but you can see, I think here is, or can you point out on this?
It says parapet wall where that slanting roof line is. You can see that the dash line below it, that is the roof level. And then you have a glass railing around
See the
the,
green section at the top? That's the part, that's the challenge.
Yeah, I know,
Okay.
I know. Yep.
So the parapet's quite a bit different in terms of its peak.
Well, what should we do?
So everyone is going to have this problem over time, every house that gets built new, because seawall heights will be higher. So the old yard will be lower. So raising the seawall is definitely lowering ceiling heights in the future.
Yeah, if you consider 9-foot ceiling is the problem. I think it's pretty.
Unlike you, I have 8-foot ceilings.
I love my 9-foot ceilings, but I don't know. Does it, yeah.
Would you like 10-foot ceilings? No?
I don't think that's the point, but sure.
Yeah.
12-foot is great too. I think it is about location and how we are a community and the kind of homes we build impact what everybody else that lives around you and sees. So,
So your point is that if you build a new house, you don't want the house to end up at a level that's higher than your neighbors just because it would affect their view. Is that right?
I just think that there's a point at which, yes, that becomes there's value in having a height restriction so that homes don't just continue to creep higher and higher and higher over top of everything. That I have a situation down the street from me where I have a very interesting tower, but
Yeah.
so things can happen.
Well, I do see your point on that.
And I
Now,
just
what
don't
about
think it's
this-
a hardship at this stage, I guess, because
So now,
it
at
is-
this particular case, if the neighbors had no objections to this whatsoever, anyone whose view could be affected, then I would say, okay, this is a one-off case, and then yes, it would be okay. But apparently, we have an objection to it.
Well, and I agree with your point. And here's the thing, our codes have changed. So we're changing the parameters of what you can do, and it's not up to me who builds what, as far as if they stick to code. But I think in this particular case, we have something that was caused by a code change. And it's gonna happen down the road again and again, and we're gonna see this only because you're gonna wanna bring your grade up to seawall height. And again, I don't know if he could live with 8-foot ceilings or if he wants 10. I mean, it's a matter of personal preference, but to your point, we're gonna have a bunch of tall mansions, or houses, I shouldn't say mansions, but big structures all along Paso Grow Way, and that's, the preservation of it is something we have to consider too. Is it our job, or is that the historic preservation's job to do that?
Well, given 9 feet was acceptable for the first floor, it seems like I'd be, if the applicant was open, and you all were open, I'd be willing to say a variance of the 2 inches, but that the floors are both 9 feet. But that would be more what I would be inclined to make a motion to support a 2-inch.
But is this hardship, maybe is it just cost, that he'll have to redo all of his?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. In this case, is the hardship worth it in this case? Because the design was done before the seawall change. Whereas if it were after, that'd be another thing. And then the other point, but then once again, we still have an objection to the variance. And I'm not sure I saw that letter.
I looked in my packet, I didn't see it
I
either.
have a copy I can send around, for sure.
Yeah, because I'd like to know who it is that's objecting and why.
It was within the 300 feet, it was at 2405 Paso Grow Way.
So if I may say one more thing to her. So if he hadn't paid for all his blueprints and
Which
had
we
all
don't know
this
if he did or not.
Okay,
Right,
well, maybe
so-
we should find out.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Was this designed,
come
how
back
long?
up? Maybe we
Come on
have
up
another
for a
question.
second, please, if you would.
Would you mind coming back up?
To the
Oh,
podium?
thank you.
When did you undertake when did you originate this project?
It was almost 2 years ago now, but as you said before, we at least realized that the seawall height was changed because we used, I don't know if you know them, Edge Marine, and when we went in with them, they gave us one price on one seawall elevation, and then it turned out it needed to be higher, also with setback walls, and yeah, my architect and me didn't realize it changed until late in the process.
And when was that?
When we realized that we had the first 2 meetings with your colleague with the seawalls, his name was Luke Curtis, Mr. Curtis, and we talked about filling the grade up to the 6 feet, and that was fine, and we didn't realize that when you moved up the seawall level, that it didn't move up at the same time the top level of the building, so we didn't realize that until into the process, and when we started the process, it was before the change of the seawall was.
And where are you at with having full set of plans for this?
Everything is done as of right now, but obviously only if the variance comes through.
And do you have a sense of what would be the impact to you for a 1-foot shift in the ceiling height of that 10-foot?
Yeah, I know that there is something with the electrical box, which is today planned to be in the ground level, which could be above flood, but then no longer could be above flood. But if it's only on the second living room level, then I don't know if it still could. I know that there are some changes, and I know that my architect, who is not here obviously, said that there will be some changes with the electrical.
Some changes to the electrical?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So when was the seawall mandate?
October, I think, right? Last year?
Of last year?
Or September?
When did you purchase this property?
I can't remember, especially now when I'm under oath, I want to get it right.
Our staff report says September 23,
September 23.
and that's in the staff report.
So was the
So
seawall...
you said you've been in this project for a couple of years now.
Yes.
So it's been at least a couple years, so, of a journey so far. Did you hear that? Okay.
I was just trying to make sure that this before.
And this is just a objection based on just the principle of it. It's not a view-related issue.
Yeah.
Do you have neighbors living all around you right now? Are they all in their homes?
Yes.
Around your
Well,
property?
you probably know this better than me, but the yacht club is open in the weekends, but not full-time, so 4 days a week, I think. And Danny, who is there, is my neighbor to the north. That would be the most immediate impacted. And then on the other side of me, that's the street going down. So some of the houses, I think, are used as summer houses. On the other side, I don't know the neighbors as well over there. And some of the houses are like Danny's, are used like full-time, and obviously the yacht club is not.
The yacht club, when it reopens, will be open. It's open 5 days a week. It's closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Hey, there you got me to say something wrong on those then.
No, I'm
No,
sorry.
it's okay.
Just letting you know.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a precedent-setting move to make this decision to just increase height of every building because they're they have a seawall. So I think that given there's a 1-foot difference and already
14 inches.
acceptable, it's a 1-foot difference of what I'm suggesting,
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
it's
they
lower
already
than
have a 9-foot acceptable living space. And so I think to have the second floor at 9 feet, I think would be an acceptable compromise. And then we give a 2-inch variance. That's where I would think it makes sense. And they get all of the benefits of having their elevator moved to every single floor, including the roof.
It doesn't go to the roof.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It doesn't open on the roof.
Yes.
Yes.
Not if it's 14 inches high.
No,
It shows
that's
that,
the additional height, because as you can see, it's peaking up much higher than the parapet. That's what the point was of why this is the challenge. Yeah.
yeah.
Is it absolutely imperative that it open on the roof itself?
Yes, he did already say that that was important to him more than having a.
Really?
He just said that
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
having the extra foot on the ceiling. That would be benefit
In
because
that
of
case,
the,
you've reached a good compromise, I think.
you guys want to make a motion?
I think he's amenable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're amenable. If you would be amenable to a 2-inch variance, if you're amenable to that.
Can you come up to the podium, please? Sorry, Madam Vice Chair.
One thing that you should consider is you can't only let him have 2 inches today and in 3 months let somebody else have 16 inches for the same reason. You're setting a precedent today.
Agreed.
That's got to be the same from now on.
That's exactly what I think as well. This is a precedent setting.
Okay?
And we're not usually a precedent-setting board. We-
Well,
we
variances
rule
can
every
be
case
used
is
that
ruled
way.
on its own,
True, yes.
yes.
If I may, and these are questions that came up that might just have some basis for you, but in 2021, that's when the seawall changed, the requirement for the height.
Oh, okay, so this new seawall ordinance did not change the actual
The height
5-foot
requirement.
nap. So it has been in existence for.
Correct. And when he purchased the
Since-
property in
For over
2023
4
and then
yeah.
demolished the existing dwelling.
Okay, thank you, that is also very helpful.
And then can I just ask one other question of Kristen? So I keep asking this, does your history go to how the basis of the 36 feet? How that requirement came in, the 36-foot
The-
height limit? I mean, why not 37 feet, for example? Is that an architectural thing based on the typical height of ceilings, or have you ever had any dealing with that?
It's 40 feet, though, is what the set rate is, just,
Oh, well, one of them's 40 and the other limit is 36, depending on where you're measuring to. So 36 would actually be the determining factor, probably on ceiling height.
Enlighten us, Brandon.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
can hopefully give some background. So back in, I believe it was 2020, the city added an additional height provision for detached single-family homes. Historically, it's always been measured from base flood or 1 foot above base flood, which of course varies throughout the city. There are properties in some areas where the living level needs to be at 14 feet NAVD. There are others where it needs to be at 9 feet NAVD. So the city put in a standard to allow 8 feet above pre-fill grade to allow for effectively anywhere in the city, Paso Grill notwithstanding, but anywhere within Paso Grill, for the height of the home relative to grade to be the same. So if you're in one area where the flood elevation is 9 feet and you're in another where it's 11, you would still be able to measure 8 feet above grade to start your measurement. The reason that it's 36 and 40 is because it's an allowance for 8 feet above natural grade plus 28 feet to the midpoint, 32 feet to the highest appurtenance of the roof, which would be either, if he had a sloped roof, it would be the ridge. But because he has a flat roof structure, it's to the top of the elevator shaft enclosure. Now, this is more beneficial in most areas and to the applicant than measuring from design flood. You can see that line in the top 2/3, I guess, of the lowest level. That's where design flood elevation is located for this property. But they are measuring accurately. It's just that 1 foot, 2-inch difference that accounts for this.
So if the roof, if the elevator is going to open on the roof, then there's going to have to be a fence or something around the roof. Is that still below the
Yes, so that, the glass railing, it's a little hard to read on this slide.
It's really hard to tell from looking at this, that's why I'm asking.
That is regulation, and that is, that will meet the requirement based on the building code. As the applicant mentioned, these plans are approved.
Oh,
by
I see,
the
that's
building
why
code
that
as well.
goes up higher on one side and the glass goes over there.
Correct. It's a 3-foot 6-inch
see.
railing
Okay.
across the seating area.
No, that explains the difference in the slope, that's why I was confused.
Brandon, can you pull up that slide 6 of 13 from the 2505 certificate of completeness and submittal documents from? Can you show that on the screen?
No, we don't have that on the PowerPoint.
It's not in the PowerPoint.
Not in the PowerPoint.
No, it's only in the packet. It's in the packet. If you
I
go to
know,
your
but we don't-
packets, the third item in the packet, 6 of 13.
We don't have access to put it up.
I know, but they can look at it on their screens or print it out.
On the,
That shows you the glass wall, the heights, the dimensions, and it shows the 2 elevator doors opening onto the roof.
Can I see those?
are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, that's the one. Can you show it to them?
What page was that?
It's helpful to have old school paper copies.
Oh, I see.
Kinko's loves you.
That makes it a lot easier to understand. Yeah.
I don't have that page number. I use it a different way here from the meetings agenda.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, that's the one.
And the point.
The things you're talking about are shown better on this drawing than they are on that one.
Well, I guess we're still in discussion.
Yep, any,
My biggest, where I was going for approval was that the seawall came after the height was changed, or the code was changed after the original architectural drawings and everything else. That's not the case.
that's not the case.
This is a new building. I have trouble with hardships on new buildings,
Yeah.
that you know what the codes are. That build something that adheres to code.
I'm afraid I agree with that as well.
I mean, in my case, it's different. I mean, it's an inconvenience, and I could maybe be here before for a hardship, because I'm being forced to have a step down.
Yes, right.
But, yeah, no, on this, if it's new construction, there's codes, they're in place. They knew what they were. So we need to make those codes work.
Would you be amenable if we did the 2-inch variance, or is it all or nothing for you today?
Well, no, it's, I'm gonna take what I can get and then,
Okay,
I have to pay for the changing of the plans.
okay. I mean, I'd be open to the 2-inch, they can come up with a solution then to keep everything, it's not gonna be a big difference to, unless you have an issue with that.
Yeah, I
altogether.
do. I mean, I would
You
just
do?
as soon just not approve a variance based on a certain
Okay.
reason.
I agree. You know what?
Okay.
I mean, if we're changing things. We're
Okay.
Giving them to,
So-
or build to code. I mean, that's it.
Okay. Well then, do we want to end the
I mean, I see
discussion? Does
a
anyone want to make a
hardship
motion?
Because his family and they need the elevator, but you know what? He knows that going in.
Okay,
Well, if we say no, then what happens?
then
Back to the drawing board.
it's,
I know, is that,
then you
Is that a
change,
little-
then you make the edits to reduce it by 14 inches, as you said.
very expensive, though?
Okay,
What do you
Well,
think?
financial hardship's not supposed to be one of the criteria if you look at the staff report.
okay.
I think it's number 5.
Making a motion then, Dan?
I make a motion that, based on the evidence, that the board deny case 25055, because what I've heard here today.
Second.
Take a roll call?
I'm so sorry, who seconded?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Member Small,
Yes.
Member Causey?
Yes.
Member Corr?
Yes?
Vice Chair Garshaw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, we have case number 25052, 100 Passive Way. Brandon.
Pull the PowerPoint back up, please. So this is for the property 100 Passive Way. It is an unnecessary and undue hardship variance. Brian J. Ongs Jr. and Clay Gilman of McFarland, Ferguson, McMullen, PA for Barracks by the Sea, LLC. Requests a two-part unnecessary and undue hardship variance associated with a courtyard apartment redevelopment of the property. So this is largely, and I'll go into more detail on this in future slides, there are 7 individual items that are requested for variance. 5 of them have to do with encroachments into required yards. 2 of them have to do with what the city describes as developed square footage. Here is a listing of exhibits. Here is an aerial of the property. The property is located at the northwest corner of Passive Way and First Avenue. The zoning of the property is RLM2 PAG. Historically, this was developed as U.S. Army barracks associated with the occupancy of the U.S. Army in the 1940s in Passive. It has over time been converted to apartments, and I'll see if I can pull up I'll go back to the aerial actually. The project that's proposed is for the northeastern building, as well as for the 2 buildings on the south side of the property. The structure at the northwest side of the property would be retained, it would be restored, and there would be some remodeling done on these stairs at the southern side of the building. However, it would remain as it exists today as a 3-story residential structure. There would be reconstruction of the structure to the northeast, as well as the 2 structures to the south, which are joined by a breezeway. The applicant is seeking to redevelop the existing 1-story, 500 square foot floor area units contained in 3 of the 4 buildings and properties, so that would not be affecting the northwestern structure. With a ground floor of 500 square feet floor area with 450 developed square feet between walls to be used for parking for units 1 and 2 at the southwest corner of the property, to be used to screen porches for units 3 through 6 at the eastern side of the property. Those would be the 2 eastern buildings. This would also provide for a reconstructed first floor living area of 500 square feet floor area containing 418 square feet of developed square footage between walls, and a newly constructed second floor living area of 500 square feet floor area containing 422 square feet of developed square footage between walls. So you can see the existing on the west side, the proposed on the right. Generally, the footprints of the structures are remaining relatively the same. The existing building footprints for each of the 3 are currently 1,000 square feet. They're remaining 1,000 square feet. There is a walkway along the rear of the structures that is proposed. That is not enclosed space. It is a walkway to access the upper levels of the structure. There is a trellis proposed as an entryway point on the eastern side between the 2 buildings, as well as some stairs. Like I mentioned, the footprints of the structures are not getting larger. It's the floor area of the structures being 2 living levels over parking and porch area. That is what is increasing and necessitating the need for the additional developed square footage. The request would be for relief of the proposed construction of a second floor addition, which includes a 9-foot 2-inch by 17-foot second floor roofed rear deck area with proposed rear yard setback of 14 foot, 10 and a half inches where 20 feet is required. Going through the individual requirements, existing is 475 existing developed square feet per unit. Proposed is 1290 per unit. That would include a ground floor, again to be used for parking, storage, and porches, 450 square feet, a first living floor of 418 square feet, a second living floor of 422 square feet. Looking at the encroachments, those are the other 5 variances. We're looking at the setback from Passive Way. The minimum is currently 10 feet. There's a proposal for the porches to encroach to 7 foot 4 inches for units 3 and 6. That is compared with an existing 6 foot 6 inch encroachment. They're also seeking a trellis encroachment of 5 feet. That would be a variance to the 10-foot standard. Looking at the secondary front setback on the south side, that's First Avenue. The existing requirement is 5 feet. The existing building is set at 10.27 feet. The proposal is for a 2-foot, 5-inch setback of the porch feature only. The wall of the building will meet the required setback. It is only the porch encroachment that extends into that setback. Looking on the western side, the alleyway side, the requirement is 20 feet for the building and 17 feet for the stairs. Existing is 12 feet, 7 inches for the building. So that is an existing nonconformity. The applicant is proposing for the southwestern building, Unit 1 and 2 building, a encroachment of 5 feet, 5 inches for the building. And then, as I mentioned, there will be some remodeling done on those existing retained northern building. That is the existing 3-story building. Those stairs would encroach to 8 feet, 1 inch. This did go to technical review committee as is required for any multifamily project. They met on May 7th to discuss this request. Comments were shared primarily by zoning related to the subject scope and included requests for additional narrative support, detailed floor plans, and a summary of applicant commitments from the Historic Preservation Board design review, design modification potential, and under consideration for relocating one or more of the dwellings to Paso Grill Park to replace the significantly damaged Shuffleboard Court Clubhouse. Some of these items were provided to staff. We did receive revised plans. We also received a revised narrative. Other preliminary comments were shared regarding requirements for obtaining a site plan should these variances be approved. So this would move on to site plan were these variances to be approved, or should the applicants just seek to redevelop without variances. The Historic Board also reviewed this case on May 1st. Concerns were expressed regarding the compatibility of the structure. It's proposed to develop square footage with the Paso Grill Overlay District. The Historic Preservation Board has in their purview not variance requests, but the compatibility of structures. There were concerns that granting variances on a blank slate would have an adverse impact on the compatibility. I did want to say that we did receive multiple letters. We received 9 letters. 4 were in support, 5 were in opposition. 3 of the letters that were received in support were received just very shortly before this meeting.
If I can just say that the 3 that were received are really only 2, because one of them is a husband and wife, and the other one is the person involved in building it who has a financial interest in it.
Understand. So there were 4 in support, 5 in opposition. 3 of those letters were provided to the board at their dais. I also wanted to mention multiple letters had called out the rooftop deck. That is a permitted feature of this structure. The height of the structure and the provision of a rooftop deck is not under consideration. It is the developed square footage and the setbacks that are under consideration. The southwestern building, units 1 and 2, it does encroach into the required yard. There is a deck on that structure, but the height of the structure is not under consideration. They are compliant. So you can see here the elevation of the structures, looking at it from the east, and then on the bottom of the screen from the west courtyard. It is a 3-story structure, as mentioned before. The ground floor would be used for the units 1 and 2 for parking, as well as the existing northwestern building. It is currently used for parking. It would continue to be used that way. For those units that face Paso Grill Way, that would be a porch entry to the residence. And you can see here the north and the south elevations. Here's some renderings. This is looking from Paso Grill Way. And then from the alleyway, looking toward the courtyard. Here's some photographs of the site in its existing conditions. This is looking from Paso Grill Way to the west. Looking at an angle to the northwest. Looking to the south, standing to the south, looking north, you can see that breezeway connection between the 2 buildings. Looking interior to where the courtyard exists today, where the pool and the renderings was shown, you can see to the left side of the screen that existing building that would be retained. There would be some work on the south side of the building where you can see the stairs today, where the decking and the stairs would encroach. And here's a better view of that building, showing the parking. And then showing the northern side adjacent to the neighbor's property. So to summarize these findings, again, there are 2 encompassing umbrella request for encroachment as well as for the developed square footage of the structure. There are 7 individual items for action, which I'll share on the next slide. Staff accepts the applicant justification for the setback encroachments, except for the southern porch request. The request generally preserve or decrease the encroachments of the existing building, which is reasonably expected for reestablishment of a development as permitted by code. What's unique to the Paso Grill overlay is that the overlay allows for reconstruction of developments at their existing density. There's a large number of structures in Paso Grill that are non-conforming to the density standards that are in effect today for lots that are being developed from vacant property. The Paso Grill overlay does allow for the reestablishment of those developments. However, they need to be retained and redeveloped at the existing developed square footage. The applicant is asking for both the bottom floor of the structure to be not counted toward that reestablishment, as well as the upper story. For the justification of the ground floor parking, storage, and porch areas of the structure, so that ground level, staff does find adequate applicant justification. We also find justification for an additional 22 square feet of floor area for the living level, which the applicant addressed at TRC. That 22 square feet is required to be provided for powder rooms. That's a bathroom at the ground floor of the structure. That is a requirement of the Fair Housing Act that was not in place when these structures were built or converted. We do support excluding that from the calculation of developed square footage. The structure's living level is required to be elevated 1 story in height, and prohibiting the applicant from using that ground floor space to meet other code requirements, such as parking, could pose hardship to the applicant and prevent redevelopment of the property with the 8 units that is currently permitted. Staff finds that there is no justified hardship at the land, at least as advanced through the application. The property could be redeveloped with a larger duplex use without complying with the floor area limitations posed to the current 8-unit project, or subdivided and support multiple single-family developments that require only compliance with the zoning code. This was addressed through the staff report, but there is the ability for the applicant to redevelop without that vested 8 units in density and build a larger structure than they are posing here. It's the retention of those additional units, that density that exceeds the city's current code, that requires this limitation on developed square footage. That's necessitates these variances before you today. Staff seeks additional applicant testimony pertaining to hardship of the structure or building, which was advanced through the application. The applicant's justification for excluding the area beneath the design flood elevation is justified by the additional developed square footage at the ground level, but not an additional living level, except as justified for the powder room and the necessary stairs and landing. Staff also seeks applicant justification for the southern porch encroachment specifically. That is the one side of the building that does not currently encroach into the required setback. It appears that Unit 2 building could be pushed back 2.5 feet to comply with the setback. It might affect the size of the pool, but it appears that it could be relocated back. If that's not the case, we do seek testimony from the applicant as to why that is not the case. The applicant should be prepared to provide their own testimony and respond to the following 2 staff comments. Staff requests testimony to support whether the building could be relocated further interior to the lot, as just stated, and justification for how the additional living square footage of 223 square feet, inclusive of the stairs, in a 2 living level development, or 343 square feet if the development remains 1 level, is necessary to allow for reasonable minimum use of the structure when reconstructed, or how the standard presents a specific hardship of the land, which I don't feel was advanced through the application, when there are other options available for use of the property in addition to reconstruction of the existing dwelling units. Should the applicant provide additional information to satisfy the board that substantial and competent evidence has been provided and look favorably on the application on the relief request, the board may wish to consider the following conditions. The interior ground floor developed square footage provided under this request shall not exceed the footprint of the living level above, or 450 square feet, whichever is larger. The facade features, footprint, scale massing, attached accessory features, and general color schemes of the primary structures as presented in renderings and floor plans attached to this request shall be preserved, except that minimum alteration may be made necessary to comply with conditions or approval of these variances or requirements of the Florida Building Code or National Fire Prevention Code. That would not be an additional variance to the developed square footage that is under consideration. That is only changing the actual look or the massing of the building. Any alteration deemed significant to the city manager shall require this request to return to the Board of Adjustment for reconsideration. And finally, condition 3, which I did speak with the applicant about previously, the rooftop decking shall remain an accessory space to the dwelling. No commercial activities may be utilized or approved on the rooftop, and that is something we discussed and they consented to for condition number 3. So again, there are 7 options under consideration today. Just going through the 7 quickly. The first is the encroachment of porches on units 5 and 8 to 7 feet 4 inches from the front property line along Paso Grill Way, where 10 feet is required. Permit the encroachment of a trellis to 5 feet from the front property line along Paso Grill Way, where 10 feet is required. Permit the encroachment of a porch on unit 2, so that's moving to the south, First Avenue facing side of the property, to 2 feet 5 inches from the secondary front property line, where 5 feet is required. Permit the encroachment of the redeveloped Unit 1 and 2 building to 5 feet 5 inches from the rear alleyway property line. That would be on the west side, opposite Paso Grill Way, where 20 feet is required. Permit the reconstructed Units 7 and 8 building stairs and decking to encroach to 8 feet 1 inches from the rear alleyway property line opposite Paso Grill Way, where 17 feet is required. Those conclude the 5 required encroachment setback variances. Item 6 is to permit the ground floor of each unit not to exceed 500 square feet in floor area or 450 square feet in developed areas between walls to be excluded from the calculation of developed square footage. Permit the living levels of each unit not to exceed 450 square feet in floor area or 343 square feet in developed areas between walls to be excluded from the calculation of developed square footage. So going back to the request that staff had asked for additional information on, that is particularly for items 3 and 7 that are presented to you here. Staff did find adequate justification for the other 5 items. That is all we have. I'd be happy to take questions. The applicant and their attorneys are present.
This is a lot.
Yes, it is.
So I want to start with that and say, is there a way for us to visually look at some of these things as we work through this? Do you have something in your, or?
I can pull up the slide that shows the setbacks. And I believe the applicant also has a model if you might want to see that, have them present first, and then I can, but I'll get back to that slide.
Okay, just so we can,
So the total number of variances that are being asked for here, is it 7 or is it 7 for each of the I mean, how many total variances? We just said no to somebody that wanted a variance of 14 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have at least 7, maybe more variances here, and they're much more extreme than 14 inches. So I'm puzzled.
They're asking for variances to 3 different standards. 5 of the variances are setback related.
I see that.
2 are related to the developed square footage standards. So those are divisions 20.15 and 20.07B through 20.15 is also the encroachment for the staircase because there's an additional permission. So
They're all over 14 inches is my point,
that's correct. Yes,
by a lot.
that is correct.
yeah, well, look at, I think this page is their summary.
Yeah, I know, I saw it.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can start on this slide, and I can at least show you the setback encroachment. So I'm going to start at the top right of the proposed slide, or the proposed part of the slide. I'm going to start at the top right there. So that's for units 5 and 6. You can see an encroachment there on that top unit. That is for a porch. That is the encroachment for the porch of the units 5 and 6 building. Going south from there, you see a porch, but it's within that dashed line. It's probably a little bit hard to make out. It was in your packets. That dashed line is the required 10-foot setback. So you can see the porch for the northern unit does encroach. The porch for the southern unit of that top northeastern building, that southern unit does not encroach. So that one is compliant. It's the northeastern porch that encroaches to that 7 feet 4 inches that I mentioned before. That is the same for the porch at the southeastern corner of the property. So now moving to the northwestern corner of First Avenue and Paso Grill Way, you can see the encroachment of the porch on that building, units 3 and 4. And again, moving north from there, that northern porch of that building is within the setback line. That one is compliant. It's for the southeastern building on that property that the porch encroaches into that setback. If you go between the two buildings, you can see that element that extends beyond that dashed line. That is the trellis that extends.
I'm sorry, where is that? In between?
If
So
you
I
see-
see so far 3 porches that are outside the lines, correct?
There are 3 porches, one on the southern side. I was going to work around to that one,
Oh,
but
okay.
on the eastern side, there are 2 porches that encroach. You have the one on the northwestern
Okay,
side of the property, and then the one on the southwestern side of the property.
Yep, the 2 ends. Yep,
Yes.
Yeah.
And then between the 2 buildings, so between the 2 gray buildings where you can see the stairs just to the east of the pool and courtyard, you can see that the dashed line, there's an element that's a walkway out to the sidewalk. Do you see that there between the 2 buildings? I'll see if I can probably move the mouse up to,
I want to make sure I know what you're referring to.
it's this right here.
Okay.
This is a trellis, and I'll go back to the renderings to show
Okay.
you where that is.
That's extending outside.
It's extending outside the required
Okay.
setback.
Okay.
And you can see that. You can see that here. You can see that trellis. That is an encroachment.
Okay.
Moving to the south side of the building, again, with one of the units, you can see the southwestern side of the property.
You can use your mouse and just move us along with you. Is that helpful for you guys too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the porch that encroaches to 2 feet 5 inches where 5 feet is required. So that is a variance into the First Avenue required 5-foot setback.
Mm-hmm.
This building currently is set within the required setback, but during reconstruction, they are required to comply with the setback. That is 20 feet. They're requesting a 5.5-foot setback for that building to be reconstructed. And if we could pull up the overhead, it might be easier to show on the overhead.
Love the red.
Clear.
Thought that might be helpful.
So that is that porch encroachment I was showing into the First Avenue setback. This is the building encroachment into the 20-foot required rear setback. And then looking at the last encroachment, that would be for these stairs here. They are being reconstructed. They are encroaching further than they are today. That is a required 17-foot rear setback. They're proposing 8 feet 1 inches. So that's the 5 setback variances that are being requested.
Thank you. And we could just keep looking at that for a minute. Do you guys have questions about this?
Yeah, I did. On the staff findings, the 4th point, if you could just unpack that just a little tiny bit. So why is there the 500 limit or 450 relative to then being able to just redevelop the site as duplexes where you wouldn't have the limit?
So that is an option. So when the city created and expanded the Paso Grill overlay back in 2017, they provided for developments to be that are non-conforming to the number of units that are currently allowed on the property to be redeveloped with those same number of units. The limitation placed on those developments and the variance which the applicant is seeking is to redevelop with a greater developed square footage than what is currently on the property. That is the limitation that's imposed by the code. They do have an option to redevelop the property with a duplex. They could look to split the lots of the property because there are multiple platted lots underlying this existing parcel, and they would be able to redevelop single-family homes. Those would not be held to a living square footage or a developed square footage limitation. It's the keeping those 8 units in redevelopment that imposes that developed square
Because of the
footage.
density, because of the 8?
Because of the density,
Number 8.
exactly. Yes, the number of 8. They would be allowed, if they were to redevelop this as one parcel, they could have a duplex that would only be limited by height, setback, and lot coverage. They would not be limited by the developed square footage of the existing development. The same would be the case if they were to split the parcels. They could develop single-family homes that could be built in the setbacks, relative to the setbacks, the height, and the the lot coverage, but they would not be limited to the developed square footage.
So can you explain to us more, what was the intent of not being able to increase the size, given that you have an eight density of the rule that was made? Or why is there that rule?
So the intent was to preserve the mass and scale of the building. That ties in more with the Historic Preservation Board's review, but there was concerns about retaining the compatibility of the district, making sure that structures, now they need to be elevated. There's no way to redevelop a structure from the ground up and keep it at grade. It does need to be elevated. That applies to historic and non-historic structures, but the intent was to not add additional developed square footage that would be viewed as out of compatibility with the neighborhood and with the development that it's replacing.
So it sounds like they're asking for exactly what that rule was set up to not allow.
And I've asked the applicant for more justification for the hardship that they face relative to the structure and building. They're aware that that's something we've asked for, so.
Thank you, Brandon. Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward? You can keep that overhead handy, Brandon, if we need it later. Could you state your
Yeah, good
name,
evening, or
address?
good afternoon, Madam Chair. Brian Ongst, 625 Court Street, McFarlane, Ferguson, and McMullen, here on behalf of the applicant. I do have some handouts that I wanted to provide to you, the old school hard copies, if that's okay, of the PowerPoint. And then this is also a revised application that includes an updated narrative in response to CRC comments. And we've actually eliminated the requested setback encroachment for the southern porch. It's out. So that one's been completely tossed. So I wanted to provide you this so you have the latest and greatest, and we can go through it together, and you'll have all the information from the applicant.
Okay.
Are there significant changes here then that would require some thought ahead of time
Kristen, have you-
before we would vote? Is this going to require a continuance or?
We
I
need,
don't think there's any significant changes, sir, other than just reducing the intensity of the project and reducing the requested variances. So I think what's before you now is less intense and less requests than what Mr. Berry just presented. And of course, if you all want to move for a continuance after the presentation, that's absolutely your right, and we'd be happy to provide more information and come back. I would like the opportunity to just give the presentation now and see if you have enough information to make a decision one way or the other. And again, if not, would fully respect the decision to come back with more information, if that is the will of the board.
If I may, was this presented to staff
Yes, sir. Yeah,
previously?
yeah. Mr. Berry has a copy and also of the updated narrative as well. And we really appreciate all of the work that Ms. Coleman and Mr. Berry have done on this. They've spent a lot of time. We actually went to the TRC in person for this one, and they, guided us through the Historic Preservation Board as well. And I do want to just start out by revisiting what's there. This is a multifamily courtyard apartment development. It is a multifamily courtyard apartment development with 8 units. There are 2 units in each building, okay? There's 4 buildings. 3 of them were damaged by floods in the hurricane. 1 of them was substantially damaged and must be torn down and cannot be redeveloped at the existing footprint. That's the hardship. One of the questions we've heard is, what's the hardship? The hardship is 75% of our buildings, 75% of our units were destroyed by the hurricane. And so now we have to address that through redevelopment. And the preference for the applicant would be to maintain the historic use of a courtyard apartment and not build, 16,000 square feet of single-family homes at 40 feet above grade, which is kind of what you just saw in the last project, which we could do as of right. So essentially, I know that this appears like a tremendous amount of requests and super intense and some kind of crazy application, but the alternative is actually, I think, far worse from a historic preservation perspective, because it changes the use, which was a historic multifamily use in this area of the beach, which I think is supportive of that type of a use, into potentially a huge McMansions, which, you know, don't really fit in this area, in my opinion. But again, that will be for you to decide. I encourage you and appreciate you keeping an open mind throughout our presentation, and obviously asking us every question that you feel like you need to ask. So from our perspective, what are the requests? We're requesting a variance to the code section 2.1, which is your definition section, for exemption of unoccupiable space below DFE from FAR requirements. So what does all that mean? These units are 500 square feet. They have to be elevated. Your floor area ratio definition includes unoccupiable grade to DFE space in floor area ratio, which means it would be impossible for us to build any living units because we can't build any living units below developable flood elevation. So that one shouldn't be super controversial. That one the staff finds support for. I'm trying to cut right to the chase and be as clear as I possibly can, because I know this is somewhat confusing, and that's our fault, not your fault. So the other question that Mr. Cossey picked up on is this not to exceed the current floor area or square footage, okay? So that comes from code section 20.07, subsection B, which says that you can rebuild to the current density. If you're a multifamily, you can rebuild to the current density if you're damaged in a hurricane, but you can't exceed the existing square footage. And our existing square footage is 500 square feet per unit. So the square footage issue is, number one, we've got to have, in order to develop any living space, we have to elevate, and we can't have that non-occupiable space counted against the square footage. Number two, we are a multifamily development. We have to comply with the Fair Housing Act. Not only do we have to comply with FEMA, we have to comply with the Fair Housing Act. We have to comply with the Americans for Disabilities Act for multifamily. So we have a minimum wall thickness in the new Florida Building Code, 50 feet of wall thickness that's being added, so take that out of the 500. We have a minimum area for a powder room that's required to be on the first occupiable level. Take that out of the square footage. We have stairwell requirements and width for ADA. And so the point is, these are not huge, massive units. Our architect is going to go through with a fine-tooth comb in detail visually for you the exact floor plans and what they look like. But essentially what we're asking for is like 275 extra square footage of livable space, what I'm calling efficient livable space, given these new standards that are applicable. So those are the two big requests regarding the square footage. Now the setbacks, I know those are scary, or they look scary. First off, this number 3 that Brendan talked about, requesting variance to code section 20.105, which is your setback section, to allow for porches to be allowable, encroachment in the front secondary setbacks for courtyard apartment building. We're eliminating that as to the southern portion, First Avenue. That was the only one the staff didn't find justification for. And I think the reason the staff found justification for all the other encroachments is because they're less significant than the current encroachments on the current footprint. And the code says, 20.07 sub B, says you can rebuild your current density within your current footprint. So I know these encroachments look like crazy, but they're existing, and we're reducing them for the most part, which is, I think, why the staff has recommended approval of those specific criteria. So I want to give you another visual. I think this is a really good visual here. This shows you we do have a 3-story building on property that was not damaged that's going to stay. So there already is a 3-story multifamily unit, 2 units on this site that is going to stay.
I thought you said it was substantially damaged, you're going to tear it down. Which one was that?
So if you look, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
So the green is fine. That was not damaged.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a barracks?
Right now it's 2 condos.
Or was it a barracks at one time?
It was built in 1988. It was built after the fact. It's not one of the historic. I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. It's not one of the historic buildings. It is not. That explains why it. Because the others were in terrible condition before. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's not one of the historic buildings. So the 3 that were damaged are those historic buildings from the 1940s, and I believe the southern 2 were the ones that the city determined to be substantially damaged. I kind of want to get the architect up now, Istvan Petronech, to take you through these next few slides. the existing site conditions, the proposed site conditions. There you'll see that southern encroachment is gone, or at least we're not asking for it. And then this is what could go there as three new multifamily homes that would give you a total of basically 13,500 square feet compared to the requested 8,000
So
square
the
feet.
remaining three-story building, you're going to leave as is?
Yes, sir.
Changing nothing there?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, Esteban, will you go through these slides, please? And if you need to use your visuals, please let us know. We have not only do we have hard copies, we have 3D models we can pass out. Do you want to start with this, or do you want to start with the slides?
Let's start with the slides, if I
Okay,
may.
go for it.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members. My name is Istvan Petronets. I'm resident in St. Petersburg, but I was looking at Rozwinski, Nikki, and I'm not the only one with a strange name. Anyway, in front of you, it sounds, as Mr. Angst said, it sounds like a lot, but I think the images that are really critical for this request are where we started on this project. And the first demand, or first, looking at the Paso Grillo code, it was maintain the character. And, character is architecture, is look. It's also, because my hands are,
Are you in control?
yes, I'm in.
I'll let you drive this.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Two drivers is not.
No. As Mr. Angst said, again, the character, this is a multifamily courtyard-style development, and that's what we were basically tasked to retain. As Mr. Angst also said then, that part of that is to maintain some of the footprint, or maintain the footprint size, and that's where the 500 came from. That basically each of the existing, these red buildings were 1,000 square feet divided into two. There is a covered entry between these two, so that's part of the character. And then also how they approach the street. They have, the porches. Anyway, so then we have to take them up. And, as Mr. Angst said, initially we have to take them up. We can't use the ground floor.
I just want to make sure everyone's clear. The red is what's existing, and the gray is what's proposed.
Right.
So the red is what's existing, and the gray is what's proposed. I don't want there to be any confusion about, wow, that red looks really close to the sidewalk. That's what's there.
That's what's there
and
currently.
The gray is what we're taking, is what we're proposing to put.
Correct. Thank you.
That's a good point. Thank you.
So the other question then, I'm just going to take you through real quick what led to this concept. One is to keep the courtyard style apartment. Two is because we had to raise it, that caused certain issues, namely access to the units. Because there are new multifamilies, we have to have certain fair housing requirements. So to get similar livable square footage, that's what we said, let's go up the extra floor. That gives you approximately similar, I won't say the same, but similar square footage of usage. To go up that high, obviously we needed an elevator and stairs to access them. So instead of each one having elevators, and it's multifamily, so we combine them with walkways along the backyard to maintain the courtyard feel also. The reason that you can see them, they're stepped, is we looked at, if we took that flat front and went up a story or 2 stories, that does not keep the character. That, the rest of the Paso Grillo doesn't have really buildings quite that wide on the frontage. And I'll go through that, but what I want to go through is, I'm sorry. Can I zoom in, or does that zoom?
I don't think you can zoom.
Okay, so what we're looking at here basically is this is a typical unit, and we've since looked at this. We come up to living area. This is the existing. The proposed is outlined in blue here. What we're looking at here is we enter the unit. we have to have, because these are two-story units, we have to have at least a usable powder room on the ground floor, in case you have a guest that needs to use the facilities. Where this one story, then we would actually have to have a larger bathroom to meet fair housing, so that would further reduce it. Right now, what we have is, if you look at the living area, is 366 square feet, structure is 82 square feet because we have to have floodproof and windproof construction. Vertical circulation, we're choosing to go upstairs, so that's the stairs. So that in normal calculations, we'd only count one of the stairs and we wouldn't count the upstairs. And then the mechanical and powder room area for that is 36. So the total floor area is the 500, but you can see the living area is 366. Second floor, similar thing. We take out the square footage for the stair. We also, these I think had window units, so we have to have normal or everyday compliant AC units and all that, so we have to have the mechanical room for that. So that takes that. The living area there is 340 square feet because we've taken out structure, vertical circulation, and mechanical, and that's the 1,000. The total living area that we're asking for on these is actually a little less than Mr. Ong said. It's 676. So basically, from the gross before 475 to 676, it's 200 square feet in addition per unit. That's the comparison of what it would take to build a similar unit, similar one-bedroom unit in modern construction on this footprint. And that's the thing, and we could spread it out, but then again, it's a courtyard type apartment, which was part of the original character. What Mr. Agnes wanted to show you is that, yes, if we go out of character and say, okay, well, just throw caution to the wind and say, let's just redo everything, this is what we're permitted to do. Among them, 10-foot setbacks, front setbacks for the two house mediums, which are these 3 lots can be subdivided. And the lower one is a house small because of the lot area. These are previously platted lots like this. The setback on the house small, for example, can go to 5 feet on that side. It actually can come to 5 feet on Paso Grill based on the code. And then, which I'm amazed with this, 3 feet on the side on this one for a house small. And then a 5 and 5. The rear setback, obviously all of them can go to 5 feet to a garage, but as we've said, 15 feet on the house mediums to the setback, and 10 feet for the lower house. This is showing you basically, we go to the 8-foot datum from the last conversation.
Would you like me to pass these around for you to look at? These are the 3D models of this is what's proposed and this is what he's showing as a potential for code, or do you want us to put them on the camera?
Which one's which? I'm
Or
sorry.
you can put them at that table right there if you want.
This table here, okay. So this is what he's showing you now as of right single-family homes. And
What would it look like on the overhead? Let's take a look.
Yeah. Let's see, they will. This table.
We're not here to discuss the single-family home concept. We're focusing on the other,
So
but,
that's what's proposed.
I know we're not here to discuss it, and I appreciate that.
okay.
I guess we're trying to show that, and especially with the 3D models, that the intensity of development is much less than what's potentially possible on the project. So we're trying to maintain the character, which is the courtyard style. We chose, and you can see on the model, and you can see on the drawings, to break up the buildings so that we have, and the historic reviewer agreed that we are compatible with the architectural styles and the historicity of the area. That's why we had the steps in the elevations.
So Esteban.
I'm sorry, please.
That's okay. Have you obviously designed this project, correct? And you are an architect licensed in Florida, right? And you reviewed the variance criteria,
Yes.
the criteria for approval. And in your opinion, has the applicant provided competent substantial evidence to meet the variance criteria? I'm going to do this part.
Would you do that for part?
Yeah, there you go. And you don't have to go through all these, but
No.
my question is, have you reviewed all the variance criteria?
We have.
And in your opinion, has the applicant provided competent substantial evidence to meet the variance criteria for the requested variances?
I believe for the variance criteria, yes.
Thank you. Okay, and he's still here for questions. I just have to finish my presentation, then you guys take over and we'll be done with our presentation here. So going through the specific,
While you were on that line of
Yes.
questioning, though, could you have Esteban elaborate on his yes?
right, well, let me go through the criteria if that's okay, and then maybe I can ask him to talk about each one. Is that okay? Okay. And this is also why I provided you with this, because we provide detailed narrative responses that Esteban helped us draft to each of these. So the first one is that special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land structure or building involved and which are not applicable to other land structures or buildings in the same zoning district. And the issue that we have here is we have 3 multifamily buildings that were built in the 1940s prior to FEMA, so they were not built elevated. They were not built to fair housing standards. They were not built to ADA standards. The code allows us to rebuild those 8 dwelling units. It's actually 6 dwelling units because 2 of the dwelling units are in the building that wasn't affected. But the code allows us to rebuild those dwelling units, but it limits us to the 500 square feet that were there that were non-compliant with federal law, not city law, federal law. So I know you said before, well, we don't want new construction to, not be up to city code. Well, this isn't really a city code issue. This is a federal law issue in the flood zone and with Fair Housing Act and with ADA. So it's impossible for us to comply with city law to rebuild at 500 square feet on the bottom floor because federal law will not allow the city to permit that. And the building inspectors will not permit it. And so that's the hardship. That's the peculiarity. The hardship here is the hurricane flooded these units, destroyed these historic structures, and they're gone. And we're trying to keep the character of what was there. I mean, that's as simple as I can explain it, and as direct as I can explain it. The second criteria is the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Obviously, we didn't cause the flood. That's clear. 3, literal interpretation of the provisions of the code deprives the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district. And the answer is this code, as applied to fair housing, FEMA, and ADA, we can't rebuild the 500 square feet on the ground floor and make it occupiable. So it's the same argument about the special conditions. Number 4, and the staff finds, by the way, the staff agrees with us as to the bottom floor, the unoccupiable space. They wanted more information about the second floor, the second floor above the first occupiable floor, about what was up there. Why was that necessary? And I think what Esteban was able to show you is the difference between the current units in livable space and the proposed units is 126 square feet. It's from 500 to 626. Number 4, the hardship has not been deliberately or knowingly created. Again, we didn't have anything to do with the hurricane or FEMA or ADA or fair housing. An applicant's desire or ability to achieve greater financial return, that's not at issue here because, as the staff has said, we could do other things that would have a financial return. I mean, those homes could have a greater financial return than 626 square foot apartments. I mean, that's a 1-bedroom apartment. It's a small living space that we're proposing. So if it may be that it's actually a financial burden for us to be proposing this, to be completely honest with you. But again, what Esteban was charged to do as an architect was to keep it the same, but up to current code. And by current code, I mean federal code and Florida building code. The variance requested conveys the same treatment to the applicant as other owners of land or structures in the same zoning district. I'm sure there'll be other cases where people have these issues that might be coming before you, but it certainly doesn't grant us a special privilege. The code contemplates that we should be allowed to retain the units, we should be allowed to retain the density, and the federal codes and the state code is what's causing the issue with that. The requested variance is the minimum variance that makes possible the reasonable use of the land. Esteban, I did want you to elaborate on that, please. If you could come back up here. And I'm almost done, Madam Chair. Let's see. So in terms of the minimum variance, can you go, first off, did you just design this to the minimum variance, and could you elaborate and explain how and why you meet that criteria?
The minimum variance to us was maintaining the footprint and what's actually required to create a unit that's usable, including the circulation and necessary fair housing items like bathrooms and those and the kitchen.
Right, code.
Yeah.
Code.
Okay. And then the final one is the requested variance is in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code. It is not injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public safety and welfare, is compatible with the neighborhood, and will not substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. And I think that the retention of the courtyard apartment style that's been there is less intense, less square footage, and it's more along of the lines of the coastal modern design that has historically been in that portion of Paso Grill than the alternative massive duplexes or massive McMansions would be. And that, again, the code encourages these units to be retained, but the challenge becomes the fair housing and those federal issues that we talked about. And we do believe, and staff found, that there are other massing and scales in the area that are similar, including Point Paso Grill, a 4-story development across the street at 200 First Avenue. And that this, again, we're not asking for a height variance. So this is not about height. This is really just about actually reducing the footprint, the setbacks from what's currently there. Still requires variances, but that's why the staff's supportive of those. And then allowing us to get a second occupiable floor so we can squeeze another 126 square feet so somebody could put a bed in and, you know, have a functional living dwelling unit. So Madam Chair, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. And the owner is also here if you have questions for him, Mr. Abel, and obviously Esteban is happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I do have some questions as well.
Yeah, great. Go ahead.
Okay.
Start with you.
So, Mr. Unks, as far as the revised application that was submitted, staff has not had the opportunity to review that yet.
Okay.
So my question is, with regards to you're saying that one of the variances is no longer necessary, number 3, which is not our same number 3, but to allow for porches to be an allowable encroachment to the front and secondary setbacks. Is that for along Paso Grill Way, also along First Avenue? Are there certain ones? Does that also include the trellis?
I'm going to let Esteban explain what he did, because I did not do it.
Okay,
He's way better than I am to explain that.
Because we have 7 and you're requesting 4, so I'm just trying to whittle them through.
Right, what you can see here on this drawing, and we did submit this, but obviously not with, like yesterday at 5.
Yeah.
What we did is we were able to,
till 10, so.
we pulled this building back, this porch here back to the 5-foot line as required to meet that setback on that side. And the other setbacks, the only one that is really in front of the existing structures is this trellis in the front. And that, because all, you can see the red line is the existing, all the other setbacks or all the other porches and building faces are behind the current building frontages and encroachments. So we're actually making it better, for.
What was on with the existing building that's not going to be torn down? What was
this one here?
Yeah, why did you pull that? What was there that's sticking out?
This was the existing stairs are here and they're in need of repair. So essentially, instead of putting it there over the pool area, we thought, let's put it at the end. And, as anything else, it's a drawing, it's negotiable, but.
When you're saying there's no elevators in these are all just.
Okay, let me say, no, there's an elevator here that goes up to just the second level. And then you enter each unit from that second level.
And each of them is going to have an elevator?
No, there's one elevator for the entire, it's a multifamily, so there's one elevator for the 6 units.
So this white area that
I'm sorry, right here.
Yeah,
This is
a hallway.
This is an exterior walkway right here with a set of stairs here, which are required. We require 2 stairs per. and a set of stairs here. The trellis really just to identify, hey, this is where, instead of going into each unit, you can come into the courtyard at this point.
But back to Ms. Coleman's question. Are you now showing the trellis request has been removed, or where is the trellis relative to the?
You know, on this one, yes, it went back to the 10-foot one. So basically, you see these light lines.
So you no longer need a variance for the trellis?
Correct.
Okay. You no longer need the variance for the trellis, and then the request for the secondary front setback on First Avenue, you no longer need.
Correct. That's
So that will
back as
meet
well.
5-foot requirement?
Yes.
Okay? And then, just to clarify then, what we're seeing on the front yard setbacks, it looks like both of them have protruded now over into, much closer, I guess, with the porch, now requiring variances on both of those?
On Paso Grill Way, I'm sorry, which?
I'm looking at your red line as what you're saying is what you've newly.
No, I'm
No.
sorry. The red line is the existing building.
Okay, so then all of the.
All the black is
okay,
back
thank-
behind all those,
I
right?
see, so every porch is now pulled back off of.
They've been back, and that was one of the criteria when Mr. Ongst was asking me what did I do. We sought to not
You need
worsen.
no variances for porches?
No,
None of the porches, okay?
correct.
So it's about the living spaces?
Yes,
And then what about the alleyway?
yes, because the 5 foot was to existing. The existing is to 5 feet. We pulled the new to the 5 feet, and it's to the garage, but just to given, because we're pulling the buildings back, that one is the living space above. So that gray box is the entire box going up. And you can see in the model.
So you do not need rear setbacks, other than, you want to maintain your existing setback?
We want, on this side, we would like to maintain the existing setback to
You need the
structure.
variance to maintain the existing 12-foot, 7-inch setback?
That's over here, and then this building had 5 feet to the building, in the southwest corner. The red is 5 feet from the alley line. So we're maintaining that setback.
And just for clarification on this, you are referencing proposed units 5 and 6
Yes,
on
yes.
all of them? Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're all 5, 6.
I got it.
So when I'm looking, I'm going,
Um,
this is not matching.
okay, I'll have to fire somebody, I apologize.
That's
but-
okay.
I'm going to say, in Esteban, I think because you're drawing these over top of existing, it doesn't mean you don't need a variance, because existing doesn't, can still necessitate a variance, because, right.
Is that correct?
So I believe that the front yard setback still had, if you're in line with your previous drawing. I guess I'm a little concerned, maybe this needs staff. We can answer some more questions, but I think we might need to do a continuance. But
I think so,
let's
too.
get as much information as we
Okay,
can
no, that'd be
today.
great, yeah.
But I think there's a lot of great movement and direction, but we would want to be digesting this and probably trying to put this on the next month's
Yeah,
agenda.
I totally agree.
But sorry.
Oh, that's
Ms.
okay.
Coleman,
That-
Other
it's-
questions we want to get clarity on today?
And I do appreciate that as staff hasn't had the ability to sit down and double check and verify that the request is not necessary. And if any other changes were made, because it could be if they're pulling them back, the sizes could change, right? So I did want to ask a question though, based on the testimony that was provided, that if you had a 1-floor unit and you said a larger bathroom is necessary, but it would also eliminate other needs for stairwells and things like that. Was that considered?
We did, yes, early on, we did look at that, but what that would cause is then really almost no courtyard, so that it gets outside of the courtyard character. And part of the courtyard character was that these buildings are rather thin and surround this courtyard on this site. So the necessity would be, I mean, I'm guessing, I'm not guessing, I'm estimating, a bathroom that size goes from a powder room to typically 5'8" by 8 or 9. So 6 by 9, which is that many, 72 square. I forget what it's 53 square feet. So it's doubles the size of that. So that, again, that just blows out the size. So then further reduces the size of the unit. So then we'd have to, go further into.
Fewer units, and then you can make them larger on one floor.
That's, as,
So I think their whole goal is to keep the density.
as the architect, I was tasked to, keep the same units
It's the
and to,
Disabilities Act that changes the bathroom size.
because they're multifamily, correct?
Okay.
And, we don't want to pull this, but that just, the reason we showed the 3 is that we're trying to demonstrate that we're building 8,000 square feet versus 13 or 14. That's possible on the site. And that's not maintaining the character. And our task was to maintain the character of not just the look, but of the use.
So let me ask you this. So if you were to just do one single living area, that would mean it wouldn't be on the ground level, it would be elevated.
Everything has to be elevated, correct?
But the proposal you've got here has the living area on the ground level?
I don't know.
No,
Not at all?
no, we have to lift it up, and the code says that counts against us, if you will, and I can't use it, and we didn't want to make it look like, Cape May stilt houses, so.
It's for parking.
It's for parking and for other miscellaneous storage
We're calling it
uses.
ground floor, but that's not, it's the first and second living floor, I guess, that we're talking about.
Yes, we're specifically the first and second elevated floors, yes.
So all of your proposal is elevated living area?
Correct.
Essentially 2 stories over parking.
Right.
Okay.
And our flooded zone here our DFE is 14 feet, so we're measuring from 8 feet still.
So, and the reason why you can't do one living area is only because you want to maintain the size of the courtyard?
Partially, yes.
Yeah, because if you just shrunk the courtyard,
Well, and then all the buildings get closer together, and so basically it becomes, right, this is 3 individual buildings, and we thought to maintain that character. And to us, the notion of character, when I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, that's the character, and that's what we've heard. They're smaller buildings, smaller footprints, and it has a usable courtyard.
But if you go to the next slide, where you have the unit sizes,
Sure.
so the existing was 475?
Well, that's the gross inside, and I'll confess, I did not go inside, and that has a small bathroom.
Right, so the existing's 475, and then the new.
Well,
space-
475 plus the 25 is structure, so I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I was just gonna compare it though, apples to apples.
Yes.
So the next one down is 366 plus 340.
Right.
Right, okay. So you're going from 475 to 705 of living area.
3, yes.
706, yeah.
Right, so 366 and 340?
Yeah.
So I think all these numbers look a little different from what we had previously.
Yeah, they
So I
were.
think what we would want to make sure is that the staff has an opportunity to review
Absolutely.
this and suggest that we motion to continue this, but if there's,
well, it would be helpful if we could, if we had any thoughts on whether they should be able to increase the living area.
okay, well, we can have some conversation.
We
about
do have
that.
some members of the public here too for public comment.
Yes.
That may not be able to make it back next
Yeah, that'd
time
be
if they
Yep,
want to
yep, I
speak
think-
today.
Yes. Deputy Clerk, would you?
Julian Sanchez?
Good afternoon. I'm an owner right across the street.
Name and address. but-
Julian Sanchez, 200 First Avenue South, apartment 305. I've owned that unit with my wife, my kids for about 5 years. So when I stand at my balcony, this property is maybe like 1 o'clock on the hands of a watch. Well, this is a curveball that they came in last minute and started changing everything, so it's a lot to absorb, and thank you for continuing this for another day. But if you told me I had to pick between what they're proposing and 3 largish houses, that's kind of part of what Paso Grill looks like. There's some cottages and there's some nice bigger houses. I'm okay with that. And another thing is the precedence of granting variances to Paso Grill Way, First Avenue South, or the alley. There's Islands End property is right next to it. It also got destroyed. They're going to come in here and ask for whatever you give these folks and probably a little bit more. And I think it's going to change the character of Paso Grill. And I think there'll be less density if you build some houses. And another thing, because that's that dog beach right there, I was there this weekend, and there's a lot of people walking in and around that area, and it's kind of dangerous, and then people coming around that turn. So increasing the density, although what they're proposing might preserve the character of that courtyard look, I think it's, in a way, going to make it more dangerous by just putting more people there.
Because it's busy by the dog beach?
It's super busy. People are just jumping out, they're fishing, they have their dogs, there's cars coming around the corner. It's a pretty hazardous area.
Yeah, I agree, I've seen that too.
And what else was I going to say? And I guess what's the definition of a hardship? Hey, when you own property on the beach and it gets wiped out and you have to comply with the new rules and the new codes, hey, everybody has to do that. I don't know if that necessarily is a hardship that, hey, I can't really do what I'd like to do, and it's going to cost me more because there's new rules. Those rules there are to, save taxes and make sure everybody complies and bills the same way, and there's some uniformity. So that's basically, and I'll come back if you guys reschedule this for another day. Thank you.
Steve Stern?
Please state your name and address for the record.
I'll say it. Steve Stern, 3805 Gulf Boulevard. Thank you for hearing me, Madam Vice Chair and distinguished members of the board. We sort of have a similarity when I grew up. I grew up in a community where there were clustered spires, and the city prevented anyone from putting anything above 4 stories. And ever since I was a kid, that was literally 4 stories, that was it. What the city did, and people like you, had maintained the structure of downtown, which to this day, many years since I've left for the beach, it still is that same structure. And when I saw this project, I noticed that there was a couple different ways to go. I personally don't like, and it's not a jealousy thing, it's just I don't like every house that's been rebuilt going higher and higher along Terra Verde, on that pathway. And I'm watching the community taking a mistake in favoring big mega mansions as opposed to keeping that character. And I've gone to that dog park 100 times, drive my golf cart down there, take my family there. It's a beautiful area. And I always noticed that sort of gateway when you're coming in from the water or you're going around that corner, a community courtyard type building. And so I saw the different comparisons, and I thought I'd rather see this still be a courtyard. I want to see multifamilies. I want to see something that's more livable still in Paso Grill, and not some major, however high, sometimes not 1 foot anymore that was protected, but that's what's going to happen. It's just going to be there, and it's going to lose some of that character. There's nothing better than coming down to that area. So I would support giving them reasonable accommodations. A setback, we all know how that looks. A setback can seem like it's right on top of you. If you're losing air rights, if you're losing sort of the dynamic of something too big in a small place. But if you can find a way to find a compromise so that they could build, keep a courtyard type environment, I think it's going to help the city, or Paso Grill, to maintain some of that character without just giving somebody else another chance to build a whatever $6 million, $10 million big house that is really not going to protect being able to go on those cobblestone streets, be able to visit the local restaurants, and that's my comment. Thank you so much.
That's all I have.
Okay. Then we'll close the comments. And I look to you to make a motion. Someone want to make a motion for continuance?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did you want to speak?
Is there a date certain that you want to continue to, then you want it to re-advertise, or do you want to re-advertise? How would you like to do
I
it?
don't, as long as we set a date certain, confirm, city attorney, we would not have to re-advertise. Our next Board of Adjustment meeting, sorry, I'm so far away from that, is June 25th.
Okay. So would we want to make a motion to, is that acceptable? June
Madam Chair,
25th?
yes, absolutely. And one thing I just wanted to put on the record, because I mentioned it briefly to Mr. Berry off the record, is it would probably be beneficial for us to go back to TRC, because I do want the staff to have a real full review, and obviously it's not their fault that we tried to accommodate some changes, but they were late in the game, so that's on us. So I'd like to make sure we get through TRC again and go through it with a fine-tooth comb, so next time we come back.
Do that, do we need to postpone this to July then? To make sure there's sufficient
Well,
notice to, I don't know what TRC schedule is like.
I would ask if you could continue to July. We would re-advertise if they wanted to come in sooner than that, but because of our TRC schedule, we need that time to get prepared. Thank you.
So July date,
30th.
July 30th?
If you choose July and you move it up, you may have to re-advertise. The purpose of picking a date certain is so that people who are here now know that the meeting's going to occur, and if they think it's going to occur in July, but it occurs in June, they might miss it. So it might be better to pick June, and then you can postpone to July, unless there's no way, Brandon, you're going to make the TRC.
I think based off of staff at the moment and just current workload, July, if it's amenable to everybody.
What's the July date? Do we know, Jenny?
30th.
30th?
And we would have a TRC in advance of that. We have a few available, so we would work with the
Continue.
applicant as long as they're available that date.
Okay.
which is better for you, Brandon?
I'm sorry, Brandon.
Either one of you.
July would
July.
be better for us to
You
give us
agree?
time.
Fine, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Madam Vice Chair, so I just think that it would be helpful to think about this 500-foot rule, and if we don't think that maybe the courtyard should get smaller rather than give them more square footage. If that were the case, it would save a lot of time if we sorted that, or at least
Okay.
provided a
Give
little
some
bit of
guidance.
indication of what we're thinking, guidance, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair discussion. So, I can chime into that point if you want. So all of the 8 units, I think there's a perspective on mass and scale that is of concern, right? And not, I guess we're only talking about 6 of the 8. The originals are perfect. But the need for elevation, and I think that is clear. Like, that is a square footage increase in my mind that isn't really livable space. So how do you maintain some livable space? That feels to me, though, where I think we start to hit the crossroads of what is necessary beyond the added square footage for the powder room of, I think it was noted at around 22 square feet, or 23, or something of that nature. So I think, to your point, we would welcome the applicant to share thoughts in the continuance in terms of more details in terms of why that would be a hardship to bring the overall square footage in terms of the living area into a much closer space to the 500 square feet, to stick with what is the current code. And that's whether, in alignment with that, we're saying understood elevation, understood that there's the Fair Housing Act requirements that need to be incorporated, and any other kind of building code elements like
ADA.
wall thickness and things of that sort aside. That would be really helpful, I think, for us to understand that and have you all look at that a little bit more.
So the character question, I think it might be more affected by going up 3 stories. You got the garage, then you got living area 1 and living area 2, than just making courtyard smaller. Like, if you change from 1 story to 3 stories, it's going to affect the surrounding property owners' views a lot more, for example.
Yeah, other thoughts?
Well, and I like the idea that we're having this discussion so they know what to address when they all get together.
Right, yeah.
Make this go smoother. That's my question. As far as the square footage, is that code or is it just adhering to what they have now to make this work? Why are we at that certain number, if I may ask, the 500?
They're at the 500, which I believe they presented as a living area of 475 square feet on that floor plan layout slide they presented, which is the same. That has not changed since staff analyzed it. That's a limitation of the code that only applies because they are seeking to keep what would otherwise be considered a non-conforming density.
Okay.
If this property were to be developed newly today, never had any development on it, it could be redeveloped with a duplex, or as the applicant pointed out, they could split the property to 3 platted lots and build a house on each. Because they want to keep all 8 of those units, they're limited in square footage in a way they wouldn't be otherwise.
So
But that's why I ask if
That's
they-
the variance in itself,
Yeah,
is
that's-
that. But as proposed, compared to, and I wasn't real keen on all of that, if we put these here and saying this, excuse me, but I think we're better off granting them more space on these 8 little units versus something else. I mean, that's where I would stand on this. I think they should hear what our concerns are, so when they have their meeting, staff and them, they know what to address. You know, talking about changing the character of Paso Grill, excuse me.
Well, these barracks
We
were
didn't,
not,
that was changed by something,
yes,
a force of nature. I mean, that's a 1 in 100-year storm.
let's hope.
I think that in my opinion, they're doing everything to make this look as good as they can to preserve what Paso Grill was. And our family's been here forever. I mean, that courtyard, that's a place. I mean, if you have family coming in, you're looking for somewhere to rent for somebody, out-of-towners, that wouldn't be a bad place. I'd rather see that than duplexes that are owned by 4 different people. And I just had to make my point there as far as that goes.
I agree with that, and I like keeping the 8 density.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that if there were a way for them to do it as a 2-story rather than a 3-story structure, by using that square footage on the 2nd story,
Okay.
that it would be the best solution.
So that's something staff, and they have to come to.
But then how big
At least they know what to
would the living area be in each? It'd be like 400 feet in each.
And that's not enough.
It's not enough, correct?
Well, why can't why wouldn't it be the same as the others because of the accessibility? So I would rather offer them a variance for the 2nd story living space instead of going 3 stories, for example.
Okay, well, there you go.
But you probably can't have as many units then.
No, you would just be a smaller courtyard, or maybe a little less setback from the street, or whatever it took to keep it at a lower level.
Well, they're proposing adding a nice new pool feature that is beyond the courtyards.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you were wanting to add something?
I just wanted to add, when you had spoke about to rent, so these would be not short-term rentals. They would have to be 30 days or more.
Okay.
With the exception of the Pascal overlay, limited to 3 times per year of less than 30 days.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there as well. And the applicant is aware of that.
Yeah.
Staff made sure.
Is that the purpose of this, to rent them rather than to sell them?
I'll have the applicant address that, but they were made aware of that at the TRC.
These are apartments.
Yeah, they would not be for transient, short term.
Well, if
They're maintaining the existing use.
30-day minimum.
No, and that's
Okay.
what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the rules.
Any
Okay.
other conversation on this one?
Mm-mm.
Someone want to make a motion?
Motion to continue this case, which, I'm not sure what the number is.
25052.
25052.
All right, 25052 to July the what is we're hoping?
30th?
July 30th.
I'll second that.
Excuse me, Member Causey?
Yes.
Member Core?
Yes.
Member Small?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garshaw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that's all of our action items today. Are there any other topics we need to discuss?
No, just for our next meeting in June, we will have another variance that's new that's coming in, as well as our status update from 2007 Pastor Way, Red, White, and Booze.
Okay,
Be back
thank
again.
you. And I don't know if, maybe I'll just have to put this, I will not be in town in July for this meeting.
Okay.
So just putting that on
Thank you.
record as well.
If anyone else can't make us, please let staff know so that
Yeah,
we
we
can make sure we
wanna
have a
make sure
quorum.
Okay, so,
So far, so
Okay.
good.
So far, I think I'm,
I'll have
Okay.
to look at the calendar.
unless I win a trip or
We at least do this year.
To go to the dentist.
so make, okay, that's all you have? Then,
That's all I have.
I make a motion to adjourn? I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 4:21 PM.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all in
Yes,
favor?
yes, yes. Bang, bang, bang.
Aye.